Hello and welcome back to the show. If you're new here, I'm Sheen, your host, and today is World IVF Day. And we are here to have a very raw, unfiltered and honest conversation, which I feel like a lot of us women need to hear. Of course, it's a big day for science, but I think for millions of women globally, it's a big day of strength. It also represents grief and hope. So it's a very interesting journey. And I feel like fertility is something experienced by so many of us globally, but not something that is discussed enough. The good, the bad, the ugly. I feel like we really need to talk about it because it is not only an emotional toll, there's also a physical toll, there's a financial toll. There's so much that comes with it. And it is most of the time seen as a very lonely journey, which is what we don't want it to be. The one thing at least we can help is by making sure we have a community around it. And my guest today is here to share her story with us about her experiences with IVF and egg freezing. And I'm super excited for us to have this conversation. So please join me in welcoming Sarah. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited for this chat.
Me too.
We've actually met at a fertility event.
Yes, we did. Exactly. It's perfect.
It is perfect. But Sarah, just before we get started, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Sure. So my name's Sarah. I'm Spanish originally, but I've lived in quite a few countries, including Dubai, Holland, Germany, Bangkok for a while as well. So I've been a bit of a globetrotter. Mm-hmm. I am the general manager of a luxury PR agency here in Dubai called JRN Consultancy, where we focus very much on hospitality, on travel, lifestyle here within the region. So that's my daytime job, so to say. And then, of course, I have my passions, which is the networking side, the getting to know incredible people such as yourself when you're going out. And I think Dubai is such an incredible place for that. So,
oh, truly it is. I feel like I was just telling you off camera that this one event where I went to and I moderated is crazy, the number of people that I've met and the things that it has led to, which are completely unrelated to each other. For example, we got to do this podcast. I met someone for coffee and it was just very social. Yeah. So this is what I love about Dubai. I feel like it really brings people together. But now that, we're here to talk about IVF, of course, but that's just one subsection of the whole conversation around fertility. So first of all, when we say World IVF Day, what do you feel when you hear that?
It's a mixed bag because on one hand, because I've been through it and, you said it perfectly in the intro, it's mixed bags of grief, but also hope. There's a lot of financial side to it as well. So on one hand, I feel for all the women that are going through it. And I think it's interesting, ever since I've done it, when you speak to women, they go, I've done it. You suddenly relate in a completely different way because you know what they've been through. So I think it's a lot of hope. I think a bit of a frustration that maybe these conversations in my case weren't had earlier, that maybe the insight or the information wasn't, and maybe naive of me not to look into it, but it wasn't that readily available. And I hope by conversations like this and by, World IVF Day that women talk about it more proudly and not so much as a taboo or something that you whisper and it's not something that you discuss. And I've really made a point of every dinner, if it comes up, I proudly share it and I discuss it. And it's been interesting to see the reaction and how many women that I never would have thought when I'm going through it or I've been through it. And I think that's what it should stand for, which is that sisterhood, that making that community, that really rooting for each other and giving grace to each other, because you never know what that person is going through. And sometimes we get so caught up in the day-to-day, the business, how quick everything goes, and you're not thinking that the person on the other side of the table might be going privately through something as stressful as IVF can be.
I think you're so right, because I think when we grow up, when we're very young, we are constantly reminded to be careful because you can get pregnant so easily, right?
Yes.
And then suddenly you have a lot of young women who get married and immediately start to struggle with their fertility. And then there's a whole lot of self-blame, right? Because you think something is wrong with you because clearly everyone else seems to be doing it so easily. What was your experience with that?
Exactly that. Because you feel like my body should be able to do this. Why can't it do this? And like you just said, the first 10 years, you're like, don't get pregnant. I want to go to school and I want to travel and and your parents are constantly, be careful, don't get pregnant. So that's kind of rooted in your head from the time you're 14, 15, 16. So that's in the background. And then suddenly you hit your mid-20s and you start to go, oh, that could be interesting. But then I need to find the right partner. And is it the right partner? Am I financially stable? Have I achieved everything I want to achieve? Is it the right time, that famous right time? So then your mind starts to switch to the other side of it, and you find your person, you go, okay, I'm ready. And then it doesn't happen. And it's a very frustrating journey. And I think in my case, I, on top of it, have endometriosis, which is something that, as you know, is not easy to detect. And it's not easy. There's not a test that you can do that, it's a blood test and they come back and they tell you. So that took a very long time to come about as well. So for many, many years, I thought my painful periods were normal. And I thought, nobody told me that this could even be a situation. I think I was in my mid-20s when they realized that that was the case. And there's not a treatment. So it's not something that you can just cure either. So it's interesting to go from this, make sure it doesn't happen, to suddenly, how can I make it happen? And, there's a bit of jealousy because, like you said, women that, they get looked at and they get pregnant and you want to feel happy for them as well. Obviously, you don't want them to feel bad about it. Mm-hmm. But then on the other hand, you feel very frustrated with your own body that it's not doing what you want it to do. And that you have to put so much more effort than other people. It's an interesting switch. And I think that's why it's not only physical, it's a lot of mental. It's a lot of talking to yourself and a lot of, is this really what I want to do? Because it's going to be an uphill battle. And it has to be an honest conversation.
You've touched on so many things
I know.
that I want to talk about. I'm making mental notes. But the first point you raised is about painful period. It is crazy to me how many of us go through life having really terrible period pain once a month. I have this girl who works with me and she has to take a day off every month because she literally cannot get out of bed. Yeah. But this is considered normal. Women think it's okay. And doctors think it's okay.
Because we don't talk about it, right? So you don't sit down and have a coffee and go, do you have painful periods?
Yeah. We don't think maybe I should consider chatting to the doctor. Maybe let me get this checked. We have been so kind of groomed into thinking that periods are meant to be messy and painful. So it's okay if that's what you're going through, deal with it. Yeah. And it's so interesting because I was having this conversation with my mom recently, and she was saying how even I had really terrible period especially when I was in my mid-20s, and it was all stress related, hormonal imbalance, a lot of things happened with it. And I remember she was like, it's crazy how a lot of your generation, you are being diagnosed with so many things like PCOS, endometriosis. And she was like, I wonder what is causing all of you to have these issues. And I was like, I don't think that's the case. I think we are getting diagnosed.
And we're asking.
Yeah. I feel like the problems were there the whole time. Even the previous generations had it. They just lived with it without knowing.
Without asking.
Right.
And you assume that if the doctor's not saying it, then there's nothing wrong. You don't want to question the white robe. You don't want to go, no, but I want to know, right? Yeah. I want to know. And there's something wrong. So you've been told it's normal. We see it in movies. We see it in series where the girl, when she's about to get her period, she's in a very bad mood and she's in pain and so you assume, okay, well, that's the norm. And then only many, many years later, I would have conversations with close friends and they would be like, oh, I just got my period. I'm like, what do you mean? You didn't know I was coming? And like, no, and you're like, but I am in pain for days before. I know, in 3 days I can start to feel it. And they're like, oh no, I have no idea. I have no pain. And okay, that's either you're strange or I'm strange, but something is not adding up.
It's not normal. Yeah, it's not normal. But even recently, one of my friends was like, oh, I got my period this month. And I was like, what does that mean? And then she's like, oh, it doesn't come every month. I was like, that's not normal.
Not normal.
That is not normal. And she has PCOS. Now she's been diagnosed with PCOS, but she didn't think about it. Again, it's because we assume that our situation is the normal situation without really looking into it. And that's why we have this whole batch of young girls going through their early adulthood with all these issues. Then when it's time to now, when they want to conceive, then it becomes a whole other conversation. So obviously that's one topic. And I do think that we are having a lot more open conversations now around this and making sure that girls are in charge and aware of their health so that they can look into it. But then you also touched on how, it's finding the right partner to do this with. And I think, again, in my experience, a lot of the things that I'm seeing is girls are struggling to get married, right? So a lot of women are getting married much later in life, in their 30s, right? And then, of course, we have a biological clock, whether we like it or not, it is there. And then because we're older, then it becomes a lot more complicated. And then some people are then settling just because they want to have kids. There's a whole conversation about this. Yes. But you've also had experience with egg freezing, right? What made you decide to do it? Hey, dreamers, quick pause from the convo. If you are wondering what the Dreamers Digest is, it's my exclusive online community where I share behind the scenes goodies, lessons from building this podcast, and all the juicy stuff that never makes it to the final cut. If you're not in it yet, check the link in the show notes and come join us. It's 100% free. Also, shocking fact, 89% of you watching this on YouTube right now are not even subscribed. Wild, right? So if that's you, go ahead and hit that button. It would mean the world to me. And now, super exciting news. We launched the Podcast Academy. This is where I've poured everything I've learned from taking this show to 150 million views and turning it into a real business. It's 10 powerful modules packed with tools to help you launch, grow, and actually monetize your podcasts. You'll even get the chance to submit your episode for personal feedback from me and my team. If you've been thinking about starting a show or scaling the one you already have, this is your sign. Click the link in the description box below to learn more. Now, back to the episode.
There's a whole backstory to it, and it was the last part of my journey.
So okay,
we could go the other way. I mean, It was the last part of my journey. And I know when I was on my way here, I was thinking about this, where my best friend and I, we had this conversation 10 years ago, where we were having, a glass of wine. We were in our late 20s then, and we were talking about, do we want to have kids? Do we don't want to have kids? As you do, you're having a chit chat. I was like, I do, but I haven't found the right person. And we also have to keep in mind, depending on where you're living, the accessibility to other options are limited as well. You need to keep in mind of what can I actually access. So we're like, we should look into egg freezing. And we had this whole chat, and we were so for it. And then life got in the way, and you work, and you forget about it. And then suddenly it's 5 years later. And suddenly it's 10 years later and you haven't done it, right? And I know we've had this conversation not long ago where we should have done it 10 years ago because it would have been night and day. But to answer your question, I think I was at the stage in my life where I still really want to have children, even though I am, 40 now. And like you said, I put my career first. I was traveling, I wanted to fulfill my own dreams before even thinking of it. I wanted to make sure I was financially stable. I wanted to make sure all of these other things. And I was, back to being single, but I didn't want to give up on the dream. And I thought, you know what? I owe it to myself. Because even if it doesn't happen, I want to know I did everything I could. And 10 years ago, I wish I had done it and I didn't. And I'm still kicking myself for that. So I don't want it to be 10 years from now and I'm going, I should have done it. So I was in a very interesting part of my life. I was in a very high pressure corporate, very fast paced job. And then I decided to, leave from that situation. And I found myself in a 6-week kind of mental break where I needed to unplug from one. And I was going into this role, which is an incredible change, both professionally and personally. I thought, when am I ever going to have 6 weeks off that I can just focus on this? And having had the experience of my previous cycles, I knew how demanding time-wise, mental-wise, body-wise. So I thought, I'm never going to get this opportunity again where I can just focus on this. And it's probably the best thing I could have done. And I'm so proud that I did it. And I didn't talk myself out of it because we're very good at that as well.
Yes.
To sit there and go, I should do it. Okay, I'll do it next week. Okay, you know what? Next month I'll go in. And I just bit the bullet.
There are needles involved.
There's needles involved. There's doctors involved. It's time. And it's also financially, it's not cheap. So, you have to also think, can I afford it? And then it's also paying every year for them to be frozen. It's also okay, then I have to start planning what I'm going to do with them and how I'm going to actually make use of them.
How long are you keeping them for?
Correct.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a big discussion to have with yourself. I'm glad I did it. It lifted a weight off my shoulders immediately as soon as I did it, because I knew, okay, they're there. And if I need them and I want to use them, which I do, they're there. So it's already mentally, it's already paid off.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I can see how you just take the pressure off of trying to find somebody as soon as possible, get married now, have kids now. And I think that's what a lot of women are finding quite liberating, right? And I think science has really come through with this one.
Yeah.
But I've seen one of my best friends go through it. And it scared me.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Just because, first of all, I hate needles. That's why I've mentioned it. And she was having to self-inject the hormones and stuff. And I saw her fluctuations in her moods, right? Not to, tell her that she was difficult. But but how was your experience with it? Like, walk us through, how long is it? The cycle of egg freezing?
It's about 4 weeks.
4 weeks
4 weeks.
Okay.
It depends. Sometimes they need to add another week to give more opportunity for the follicles to grow. So it depends on, it's so individualized.
Yeah.
That's the thing. There's no cookie cutter. It is such an individual process, and it depends how fast they grow, how not fast. Like there's so many. But I think mine was about 4 weeks in total. You just reminded me that I've spoken to about 5 girlfriends now, and they're all in their mid to late 30s, and they're like, I don't know, some are in a relationship, some are not. I don't know. And I'm like, if you don't know, do it, because there's nothing worse than the regret of not doing it.
Right.
And a lot of them go, but I don't actually know what's involved in it. And that again shows you the lack of education, right? Even though we have internet and social media and podcasts and books, and we still don't actually dare to ask the question, because it feels a bit taboo still. And when I tell them the process, they go, actually, that doesn't sound so bad. I do put the disclaimer that everybody's different.
Of course.
So just because that was my experience.
Yeah, and your doctor will know best what is good for you.
Correct.
Yes.
Just because my body reacted that way, good or bad, it doesn't mean your body's going to react that way, good or bad, right? So I think, look, I've had 3 cycles in total. One ended up in IUI, one ended up in full IVF, and one ended up in egg freezing. I would say that egg freezing was by far the easiest.
Okay.
By far. Obviously, as you know, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, the different circumstances in life where you are mentally, physically, emotionally also makes a huge impact. But that last cycle for me, and again, I had just come out of a very high pressure job. I had 6 weeks of nothingness. So that made a massive difference. Right. Because you're not worried about meetings and calls and emails and scheduling, and you're literally just listening to your body. If I wanted to sleep, I slept. If I wanted to go for a walk, I went for a walk. And I think that makes a huge difference. I'm not going to say there was no side effects. There's side effects.
Of course.
The moodiness, definitely, but it was not anywhere near the first 2 cycles in terms of the depression that I had. Potentially, I think my second cycle was probably the worst one, where it really, really hit. With egg freezing, I was a lot more relaxed. And, I wanted to go to the doctor, I went. And I wanted to have a coffee after. Like, I didn't have to rush anywhere. I wasn't. So that already just completely changed the relationship with the cycle. You swell up, definitely. Injecting yourself is not fun. It's not, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you have to do it, you do it. You feel bloated, obviously. You get cramps. But again, it was not anywhere near as bad as the other 2. But I do think if you're going to do it, you have to take some time to do it.
Right.
Because running between meetings or running between calls, the stress you're putting your body through, plus the physical situation that's happening, it's not a good combination.
Yeah, and you're probably more vulnerable to whatever external factors are there anyway. So,
yes.
Because I remember we were talking about this at the Oversave event as well, is in the workplace, nobody knows that you're going through an egg freezing cycle, and they would expect you to turn up the same way and show up and be normal.
And it's not easy to have that conversation with your employer to say, I need to go in 10 minutes because the appointments are based on what's happening in your body.
Right.
So you can't block
You can't say I'll go tomorrow instead.
Yeah, you can't say I'll go tomorrow. You can't say I'll go after work. Like if they tell you have to come in 2 days at 11:45, you have to be there at 11:45, and you maybe have a board meeting, and so you have to tell them. And it's not an easy conversation to have, especially if your manager is a male and not a female. And that was the case for me. That was not an easy conversation to explain. Luckily enough, the reaction was super positive, and it was very supportive, but it wasn't a conversation I wanted to have. So it's a bit of this give and take as well, right? You're going through this, nobody knows you're going through this, but then at the same time, you might have to tell them because you have to leave in the middle of a meeting. So I highly recommend, and I know not everybody can do that, to take some time off. It's not easy, and obviously a lot of the women we're talking about are working corporate, high-pressure jobs, very big responsible jobs as well. But it's just about that mental state, I would say. So as much as possible to reduce the stress load. I get it. It's taking 6 weeks off. Not everybody can do it. But it's more of trying to reduce the external factors as much as possible.
Yeah, and I guess it also falls onto the workplace as well now, right? These are new arenas we need to start to figure out how to navigate, because it's not like someone is unwell and it's not like someone is having a baby. It is a new scenario now where someone is preparing themselves. So some kind of consideration needs to happen. And I know the conversation is out there now. People are starting. So maybe this is where we will see workplaces making it better for women who have to go through this.
Yeah.
But if we were to like super simplify what does egg freezing cycle looks like.
Sure.
It's basically you get weekly for a few weeks you get injections, and then is the last stage like invasive surgery or not?
So you get you get a lot of blood taken out and a lot of scans. So get ready for that. And it's not everybody's comfortable with that, where every 2 days there's a scan happening. It's not the most fun, comfortable, but so there's obviously the cycle of the hormone depends on your blood work. It depends on, I have very low AMH, for example, so they had to give me very different layers of hormones. The best way to describe it is they're building you up in terms of the hormones, which is the bloating, which is the not feeling great, which is the up and down, that emotional roller coaster, because they are playing with your hormones at the end of the day. And then when they go, okay, they're the right size, we have enough to warrant a procedure, it is a full anesthesia procedure, which again is not great. Nobody goes in to do that voluntarily, but it's about 15 minutes. So you go in, full anesthesia, 15 minutes later you wake up. You do feel some cramping. I mean, for those that have painful periods, they know what that feels like. You feel that something's happened, like a bit of bruising. Yeah. But I would say 24 hours later, just take it easy that afternoon. Hot water bottle helps. Obviously, I went straight to bed and I was watching, TV in bed. And the next day, you're pretty much good to go.
Okay, and it's like keyhole surgery, right? So
not really. It's very graphic, but it's a very big needle that goes in through.
Oh, from down there. Correct. So there's no cutting.
There's no cutting. It goes straight through there, and it's a needle that goes straight into your ovary.
Okay.
So think about it like a mini vacuum.
Yeah. So they take it from inside, basically.
Correct. So it goes straight. So there's no cuts. There's no stitches.
No scars. Nothing.
No scars. Nothing. You just feel a bit of discomfort.
See, we really don't know what it is.
I know. And again, until you've been through it or somebody's spoken to you about it, it's not something you proactively go, I wonder how they do that, and look it up. So
yeah, you don't. I think these are conversations we all avoid at the end of the day. We don't want to know. I even went with my friend to her surgery, and I didn't know that's how they did it.
Really?
I didn't ask.
You probably thought she had been cut everywhere. And you look great.
Like, you're walking. Okay. But no, that's the thing. We are all educated. We understand these things, but we don't talk about it enough. Yeah. And I think this is why this conversation is important. But you've mentioned repeatedly now that this was the easy one. So now let's talk about the hard ones.
Yeah.
So you said you've done 2 cycles of IVF. So I'm going to walk you back through the first one. What made you decide? Oh, of course, there's like so many considerations, financial, emotional. you were married at the time. So there's so many factors. How does one even go about making that decision?
Well, I was already 37 at the time. So again, getting married at a later age. My partner at the time was very family oriented, which is one of the things I loved about him. I had been so focused in my career previously. I had achieved everything I wanted to achieve in my career. And I kind of went, okay, but there has to be more than just, being a VP or being like, there has to be more. So I think a week before or 2 weeks before our wedding, I was violently ill one evening. And like I couldn't walk, incredible back pain, terrible. I didn't know what was happening. I have a very high tolerance of pain and I had never felt anything like it. So, ended up in emergency. They thought my appendix had burst. They thought they did all these tests. And one of the tests is they did an ultrasound. And they came back and they went, look, we're going to give you a whole lot of painkillers, but you need to come back and see the gynecologist because we've seen something in the scan. So I went back 2 days later and she said, it's endometriosis. Your endometriosis has flared up. It's covering your ovaries. It's covering your uterus. We need to give you surgery. And I was like, I am flying to get married in a week. And she's like, your ovary might burst.
Oh my God.
So we need to do the surgery. So it wasn't necessarily the best timing. And it wasn't necessarily a voluntary decision. It was we have to do this.
It was emergency.
Yeah, we have to do this. So off I went, and that is a keyhole surgery that they cut, and they move around and they do stuff. It was successful. They took everything that they had to take out. Off we went. We got married, came back, and 2 weeks later, my gynecologist said, look, you need to look at IVF because the chances of this happening naturally is very, very low.
Okay.
And when I first heard it, I thought it made sense. And now the more I hear it, it aggravates me a bit. This whole, the best remedy for endometriosis is getting pregnant because it stops your period for 9 months. And what flares up your endometriosis is your period.
Okay.
So when I heard it, I thought, well, that makes total sense. Total sense, right? Now when I hear it, I'm like, it cannot be that the only solution to this is to get pregnant. And back then, again, you're in a state of panic, your body, your hormones, there's all of this going on at the same time. So off I went, did some research, and granted, probably not enough research, but again, you're in a state of panic and you're in a state of, the doctor has said it might come back. And if it comes back, it might have to be a full hysterectomy. So they're giving you all this information that
and
makes
you're not an expert, right?
And you hit the panic button because you're like, well, it's like I have a ticking time bomb inside of me, and they might take the choice away. And then I don't have these options anymore because if it's a hysterectomy, I don't have any options left. So you kind of hit that red button and you go, I'm going to go look. And I'm still recovering from surgery, invasive surgery. But in my head, I'm like, this could happen tomorrow, and I have to get rid of it. And best way to do is get pregnant. So I went to, and again, probably not enough research. I went to one clinic, which probably ended up being the worst decision I could have done. Just because, again, we walked in and I was still bruised. I was still not feeling great. I mean, aside from the physical side of it, the mental, all of this information that's being given to you. And that doctor said the same thing. We have to start cycle immediately. And again, they're wearing a white robe, so you don't question.
And it's the second one you're getting, right? Second opinion.
Correct. So you think, I have to do this, even though you're still recovering, even though it's like you've been run over. In your head there's this fear of they're going to take my only choice away. So I think it was the week after, I was straight into a cycle. So it was probably a month after my surgery.
Quick.
A month or 6 weeks maybe after my surgery. And so your body's not ready, your mind's not ready, your emotions are not ready, but you're just in a state of panic. So yeah, this first cycle happened. It ended up being that there was not enough, the eggs were not mature enough, and there was not enough eggs to do a retrieval to do the full cycle. So she said, look, let's do an IUI.
Tell us, what is that?
So again, very graphic, but an IUI is basically insemination. So they basically take the
you
substance.
Can say it. You can say it.
I don't know what we can say, but they take the substance and they just direct it to the right place.
Okay. So it's just assisted, basically.
Correct. Just assisted with a syringe, nothing, no
So they don't extract your
They don't
eggs.
do anything.
Okay.
They basically say, look, we've given you the hormones, so your body is more or less prepared. Let's not waste it, so to say. So then we do an IUI. So that wasn't the full cycle.
Okay.
That was not successful. And again, they told us the chances of that was probably a 1%. So you don't have high hopes, but you just don't want to feel like you've wasted the cycle.
Right.
After that experience, I was like, I'm not going back to that clinic. It didn't feel right. My connection with the doctor wasn't there. It felt very mechanical. It felt very numbers. I wasn't a person. So I went to the second clinic, which was night and day in terms of the experience. Actually, when I went to the second clinic, and this was probably 4 months after my surgery. So again, my body is very different. My mind is very different. They were very different. And as soon as they looked at my blood tests and they looked at my scans, they're like, you're not ready for a cycle. Your body's not ready for a cycle. And when they started to dig, they recommended I go to a few other doctors. They found out I had a mold infection. So no matter what my body, they were putting into my body, it wouldn't work. So the first clinic completely disregarded all of that. And I paid 30,000 dirhams for an IUI effectively that never was going to work. And then the second clinic was like, you're nowhere near. This is pointless. We need to get rid of the mold infection. We need to get your AMH up as much as we can. We need to get we need to do a lot of back work and a lot of foundation. And it was shocking to me that the first clinic hadn't even thought about these things. So then I had to invest a lot of, I think it was about 7 months to get rid of the mold infection, to get my, I was taking, 10 different pills with different different vitamins, etc. And then I finally got to the stage where I was ready and again, they didn't rush me. They were like, no, we have to listen to your body. We have to listen to. So that was a full cycle. And that one was probably the hardest. And potentially because it was a full cycle. So you have all the mental up and down of the egg extractions. How many did they get? So that you're waiting. Then how many are mature? Then you're waiting for an answer there. So your numbers start to reduce. So you have 6, but now only 5 are mature. Then they inseminate 5. And then day 1, only 4 have started, So then every day after they've actually mixed everything and you're waiting to hear back from them as to how many embryos, how many make it to the end, because then every day that changes. If you're lucky enough, they all stay. But in my case, they didn't. So I started with 4, then the next day was 3.
Oh my God, so you're gambling every day.
You are. And again, this is that emotional and that, mental side of it. That not only affects you, it affects your partner. And your partner hasn't gone through the physical side of it, but he's going through the mental side of it. You have had more time to catch on to it because you've gone through the physical side. They've been seeing it from the outside, right? So then that number game happens. And then let's say out of the 4, 3 make it to day 3 or day 4 blastocyst. Then there's, do you want to do the DNA testing?
Oh, yeah.
The gene testing, because what's the point if half of them have defects or or all of them have defects? But then that's another test that you need to wait for. And they might come back and say they're all defects. So you've just done a whole cycle and there's nothing that comes out of it.
So at any time the journey can end, basically.
Exactly. Before they've done a transfer. In your head, you think, oh, it's fine. I'll take the eggs out, they'll make embryos and they'll put in. But nobody talks about the fact that actually just to get an embryo to the final stage is already the journey. That putting it back in, that's a whole new journey. That's a different side of it. And nobody talks about that. So let's say, okay, you've done all of that. You've done the gene testing and you come back and you have 1. Then they have to put it back in. And just because they put it back in, it doesn't mean it's going to work. So for me, in my case, it didn't work.
So you got to that stage.
I got to the stage where they put the embryo back in. And then for the first 3 days, you're like, I don't want to think, but technically you are pregnant because they have put but you don't want to think I'm pregnant because I want to wait until. So it's probably the longest 7 days of your life. And every day you're looking for spotting, you're looking for cramps, and sometimes it's implantation cramps and sometimes it's not implantation cramps. And then you go down the rabbit hole of the internet and you're like, oh, I don't know, my breasts are tender, does that mean I'm pregnant? Or, or I'm having a cramp, but is that an implantation cramp or is that a lost cramp, or is that a period cramp? So it's again, it's 7 days.
That sounds like an emotional nightmare.
It is. It is. It genuinely is. So that I would say that was probably the worst one.
Oh my God.
Mentally.
And from the minute you decide to start an IVF cycle to you being inseminated at the end, how long is that?
For the IVF cycle, we did a frozen. Was it a frozen? I think it was a frozen embryo. I think it was from the moment we started the cycle to the implantation, probably 2 months.
That's a long time.
Yeah. In terms of first the cycle, and then, because then they have to prepare your body for the implantation. So then you get hormones again.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of back and forth with your hormones. I mean, at one stage, they put me into menopause to stop the cycle because my body wanted to release them, but they weren't ready to be released. So that was probably the hardest part of it. When they put you into hormonal menopause, I mean, they're stopping your body from doing what it's meant to be doing. So it's tough.
Oh my God.
You need to know you want to do this. And you need to be ready for all the scenarios. And I've heard women that have had incredible IVF experiences.
Yes, same.
And the first round they got pregnant and they had 24 follicles and they had 10 embryos. So my case is very, very different. But you have to be prepared for all the cases.
Yeah.
We all want I got 10 embryos and I got pregnant in the first round, obviously, but it's not always the case.
Oh my God. And how did you feel after that didn't work out?
Very frustrated. Again, we talk about what we said at the beginning, that my body should be doing this. Why is my body not doing it? What have I done that I'm not doing it? But then you start to talk to doctors or you go to events and then you realize it's very widespread and it's scarily widespread. And maybe it's because we're talking more about it, but you hear more and more about women that are struggling, whether it's environmental, whether it's our lifestyle, whether it's whatever it is, but you have to acknowledge there is an increase in this in the female population and in the male population, but especially obviously in the female population. So it's very frustrating. You're very angry. It affects you as a couple, obviously, because again, you're both experiencing it. You're both experiencing grieving and the loss and, the last 2 months that you've been through and all the ups and downs that you've been through. So it affects you. Your whole world becomes about that. It's very hard to go have fun, or it's very hard to, because you're watching what you're eating, you're watching what you're drinking, so it's, again, your whole focus is on that one thing, which is probably not right either, because then it becomes like an obsession. And that's all you talk about. And that's all you think about. And that's also not good for you as a couple. So it's not pleasant. It's not something that I would wish on anybody. I think if you never experience it, I would be so happy, because it's not a fun thing to go through.
I know. And, I've seen friends even trying to get pregnant, right? Even without IVF, even that puts a strain on a relationship. Because now it starts to feel very mechanical. It feels like, and as you said, once it's not happening, it becomes an obsession now. And I think, do you feel like sometimes then the conversation becomes more about when is it going to happen rather than do we even want this?
Yes, it becomes like a challenge.
Right.
Yeah, it's that. But now we're in it now. Like, we need to do this.
We need to get to the end.
Yeah. We need to see what the end, what the end decision is here, which is not what it should be about. And again, before we went on the IVF route, we were trying naturally, and the fun goes away. It genuinely does. And I was never really the person that tracked my cycle and, oh my God, I'm ovulating. I never did that, but it's in the back of your head, and it takes away that spontaneity. It takes away the, and then we should talk about that as well. When people go, just go on holiday, just go on holiday and relax and just, try and you're like, It's not the solution.
The problem is not that we're at home.
No, I don't need the scenery, to make it happen. But it becomes a mechanical situation. And that's not fun. So that's going to affect you as a couple as well. So I think, when I hear couples that have gone through 10 rounds, 11, you're warriors. Like, you could go to war together as a couple, because it is so intense. The fact that you have done 10 of this and you're still going, I take my hat off. I take my hat off.
But what are the things you think that if any couples are about to go through a cycle, what would you tell them to watch out for or how to prepare for it?
I think you have to 100% be as prepared as you can in terms of, like what I said, it doesn't mean you're going to have a baby at the end of it. And I hope you do. I for everybody that's trying, but you have to be ready that it might not. And it's hard not to get excited, and it's hard not to think I'm going to see those 2 lines, and it's hard, because you want it so, so bad. But I think you have to keep in the back of your head, it might not happen, and that's okay. And are we okay with that? Because as a woman, and again, this is another conversation that I've had as well, is I've gave the opportunity to my partner to walk away because I said, this is going to be really difficult. And you are 100% fine because he was tested. I said, if you don't want to do this, this is your chance to walk away. Because I know I have to do it, but you don't. You have the choice. So these conversations need to be had because you don't want to feel like you're trapping the other person. You don't want to feel like they're doing it because they're feeling sorry for you either. You really have to have raw, honest conversations. And the conversation of, if it doesn't happen, then what? Are we still okay to be a couple? Are we still happy if it doesn't happen? Are we still fulfilled in our relationship if it doesn't happen? Do we want to think of other options if it doesn't happen? So you have to have that conversation because when you're in it, you have to cling on to that. And you have to cling on to that connection between the two of you and check in and make sure you're still on the same page and make sure that you're still, and try to have fun. And I know it's super difficult to say that, but go for dinner, go to the movies, because if you sit at home and just talk about it, you're working each other up.
Well, you're telling us that you're going through a lot of hormones. It's a lot of medical procedures. It's stressful. It costs money. Try to have
I'm not
fun.
selling it very well. I know. I'm not selling it, but
no, but it's the reality of it, right? And I think it's important to have a very realistic picture. But something else that you mentioned is you do get a lot of unsolicited advice from people, right? Especially when you are in the early days of struggling with conceiving. But how do you navigate that?
Honestly, smile and wave and smile and nod and sure, okay. And sometimes it's family and they're doing it with their best intention.
It's coming from a good place.
It's not malicious, it's not poking fun. And I sometimes think maybe you should keep it to yourself for as long as possible that you're doing it, because again, you're going to get this. If you go on holiday, you'll be relaxed and it will happen. And I was struggling, but then I don't know, I did it on a Sunday and it worked. And then people give you their own experiences, which again, you appreciate that they're trying to share that knowledge with you, but it's not what you want to hear at that time. Then you hear that other people are getting pregnant at the same time. And again, you want to be happy for them. But it's that unsolicited, the holiday one, or it will happen when you least expect it, or, which is the same as when people tell you you'll fall in love when you least expect it, right?
Oh my God.
It's the same thing.
Stop wanting it and then it will come to you.
Yeah, you put that energy out there. So it's something that you need to just smile and, hope that it's coming from a good place.
So I'll tell you something now that you mentioned, the whole thing of like hearing other people getting the good news. I was once moderating a conversation where it was someone who has struggled with IVF and was still on their journey with IVF, and someone else who's had 3 kids through IVF. And I personally found that conversation very jarring. And I kept thinking about this woman being like, how must she be feeling? And which is why even for me, initially, I thought I will have like a panel conversation for this show. And then I was like, I don't think I want to, because I think it must be jarring for anyone to be in that kind of position where you're talking from a place of, I'm not done with my journey yet. And it might be nice to see someone who is at the end of that journey. But then how often do you want that reminder?
But, I just realized I haven't sold it very well. But what I think you have to go with hope still. And you have to be very clear that it's something you really want. And again, it becomes a bit of a sisterhood when you've been through it and when you've experienced it. I could hug any woman that has said they've been through IVF and they got a baby out of it. I mean, that is incredible.
Yes.
And I've heard women that have done 10 rounds and haven't had a baby out of it. And I want to hug them even more because I'm like, you are the bravest human being I've ever met. And the fact that you're still going and they're like, no, we're going to keep going. I mean, would I? Probably not. But the fact that they're still, and they're married and they're happy, like, incredible. I take my hat off. I think you have to also respect the women that go through it and get their baby. And I'm so happy for them. I'm so proud of them because, again, it is such a difficult journey. But like you said, I'm not done with my journey yet, right? So I have to still hope. And the reason I did the egg freezing is because I do still hope. And I do still want it to happen. I don't know the format it's going to happen in yet, but I know that I still have one last shot. Mm-hmm. Now, I also know it's my last shot. And I know that that's it. After this, my body's had enough. I need to give it a break. Mm-hmm. So you have to be very clear with what you want. And that's you as a woman, not you as a couple. That's you as a woman, because your partner might be going, no, we can do another round. We can do another round. But your body's done.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to stand up for yourself. And I'm done. Mm-hmm. I know you want this really badly, but we need to look at other avenues because I cannot do this up and down and the hormones. And I think, for me, it was, I'm going to do the egg freezing. And then with whatever comes out of that, I will try to do something with it. But after that, I'm in a relationship where I'll be happy, even without, and we've spoken about other options. We've spoken about, okay, if this doesn't happen, do we do this or this or this? But it's finding that right person that you can have those conversations with and say, and even if it doesn't, we'll be okay. And that's the main thing, because if not, the frustration between the two people happens. When one is going, go, 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 the other one's going, I'm done, or I don't want to, or let's look at this option. The other person's like, no, it's this or nothing. I think that's where the conflict starts.
Well, I want to ask you a very personal question.
Sure. From
a very personal place as well. I recently turned 30. And when I was younger, the plan was always, by 25, be married. Yeah. By 30, have your first child.
Picket fence, the dog.
Yeah. You have your career, your husband, 3 children probably by 30.
Yes.
And obviously that hasn't happened, and for good reasons. And I keep seeing everyone around me, all of my friends are also struggling now that they want to get married because they've built their career first. You've done the same thing as well, but you are further ahead than us in the journey. Do you wish you did anything differently back in the day?
The only thing would be the egg freezing.
Okay.
That's the only thing.
But you wouldn't have changed what you prioritized?
No.
Okay.
No, because I think I've had other frustrations. And I think you have to be happy with where you are as a person before you go into a partnership. And if you're frustrated, you didn't do the job, or you didn't do the study, or you didn't go to that country, or there's no way you're going to be happy with the other person, right? And just to support them living their dreams, but then you're not living your dreams. I think it's okay finding somebody at a later age. Like I said, I was very lucky with my previous partner, very amicable divorce, very beautiful relationship. It just wasn't meant to be. And I am extremely lucky that now I found another incredible partner, and at a later stage of my life that fulfills me in a completely different way, right? And so I wouldn't change any of it. I wouldn't change any part of the journey. I wouldn't change all the traveling I've done, the jobs I've had, the people I've met. I've traveled all of Asia. I've traveled all of the Middle East. I don't think I would give all of that up for the 25-year-old with a dog and the white picket fence, and because I don't think that's sustainable. But some people don't have the ambitions of the career, and their ambition is that, and that's also okay if that's your ambition. But if you want to fulfill yourself first, that's what you should do 100%.
I agree. And I think it's unfortunate because in our prime, like the youngest years of our life, you can either build your career or you can start a family. You can't do both. Yeah. And I think this whole myth of like women can have it all, I don't even believe it. I feel like it depends what does all mean. And all means very different thing to different people, as you said. Some people might not be ambitious and they just want to stay home, which is absolutely fine. Some people might not want a family ever, also fine. But it's just, I think we've lied to women that they can do it all at the same time. And that's why now we've hit this generation of women who feel like they've failed because they've succeeded in their career, but they haven't managed to do the other side yet.
Yeah.
Now it feels like a failure. And then you have all these added medical challenges that come along the way. And the guilt is there then.
100%.
Right?
It feels like a race.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I've done that now. Okay, I need to focus on this now.
But now my time is running out.
Now my time is running out, which is why the only thing I would do differently is 10 years ago when I had that conversation of, hey, let's freeze. Like we said it as what a fun thing to do, because we didn't even know.
Yeah.
Same thing. We didn't know. We had no idea what it entailed, but we're like, maybe we should just That's the only moment that I wish I had followed through and I had done. Everything else that's happened since, I wouldn't change at all. Because again, having had those experiences makes me who I am as well.
Yeah.
And I think, when you are a parent to a child, they become a lot of the focus and you don't want to sit there resenting that. You want to know that I've done all of the stuff I wanted to do. And now I'm happy to take a bit of a, step back and put my energy into my child or into, my family because I've ticked all the boxes. And I think that should feel very rewarding as well.
Yeah. And also it's a good example to set for your children as well.
Definitely.
But how was the emotional journey of accepting, as you said, this is your last attempt at trying to have a kid? How was that journey from probably you also wanted a normal big sized family and now accepting that this is your last chance? How was that?
It's not easy. Again, when I was single and I had started to think about this, it was more of, okay, what does that look like? Do I just go and try to do it as a single person? Do I go to other routes? Adoption. There's so many other routes, which are not easier, by the way, when you start to look into it. But there are other options. So I did start to think of all of that. I think now, I'm in a stage of my life where I've met somebody incredible that has a son. And it's beautiful to be able to experience that and see them and the bond that they have and, start to build our little nucleus kind of thing. So if that's what it is, then, it is what it is. I have a brother and a sister. They were born when I was 16 and 17. So I've seen them grow up. So I've had that experience as well, even though I was living quite far away. So it's okay. And I think I need to prioritize my body. And I need to make sure I had a bit of a health scare at the end of last year. And I need to make sure that I'm listening to my body. I think my body's going enough. I'm done. And that should be the priority at the end of the day. Not put more stuff into my body that could cause something else to happen.
Right.
So that also kind of helped make the decision of this is it. But then you just have to mentally be okay with the fact that, I've had an incredible journey so far. And look at all the incredible things that I've done. And will it come in another format? Maybe a format I never would have expected.
Right.
Where I met somebody that had a child. And 2 years ago, I never would have even put that into my equation. And now it's happened. And I'm like, this is actually great. So I think it sometimes happens in the format you don't expect it to happen. And you just kind of have to listen to the universe a little bit and go, okay, maybe it's not the pregnant belly and, that whole experience, but I'm getting to experience it in some format else. And I should listen to that. But I think the main thing is listening to your own body because it's not worth the risk.
Yeah. And the plan evolves, right? I think that's what that plan that we made when we were younger, it was with a lot of missing information.
And you evolve.
Yeah.
And what you want evolves.
We grow up in very different ways than we thought we would.
And you might want kids your whole life and then you hit an age and you just actually, I don't.
Yeah, maybe I do. I wouldn't want to be a parent.
I'm happy. I'd rather go on a cruise, which is also okay. You can make
priorities change.
Exactly, and there's no right or wrong. At the end of the day, it's what you want. That's what I would say. It's what you want, and it doesn't matter what anybody else says or thinks, or if they would do it the same or not. That's absolutely up to them. I would say that it's such a personal journey.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, that's what it is, right? It's a personal journey. Well, Sarah, thank you so much. This has been really nice, eye-opening, little bit scary conversation.
I promise it's not as terrible. I promise.
But thank you so much for sharing this with us, and we really appreciate all the education you've done.
Thank you very much.